Jack Thompson stepped off the transport shuttle at Kepler Xenobiology Institute, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder and a worn baseball cap sitting backwards on his head. The first human exchange student in the university's 300-year history, he drew stares from the diverse alien student body milling around the landing platform. Some students quickly moved out his path, while others craned their necks to get a better look at the legendary species they'd only heard about in xenobiology textbooks. "Welcome, human Jack," chittered Vex, his crystalline Vithrak roommate, light refracting through their translucent form in patterns that indicated nervous excitement. "I am most curious about your species. The dormitory administrators have prepared special accommodations for your unique biological needs." Jack looked around at the massive crystal spires and floating platforms that made up the campus. Cool architecture. Reminds me of that sci-fi movie from back home. He shifted his bag to his other shoulder. "What kind of special accommodations?" "I'm pretty easy to please." Vex's crystalline structure pulsed with uncertainty. "Well, we installed atmospheric filters to remove toxins that might harm your respiratory system, radiation shielding for your sleeping quarters, and a specialized food preparation unit to neutralize any potentially dangerous substances in your meals." "That's thoughtful, but probably not necessary," Jack said, pulling out a water bottle and taking a long drink. "I'm pretty hardy." A group of insectoid-cast students nearby began clicking their mandibles in agitation as their scanners detected the liquid Jack was consuming. One of them, a tall student named Rix, approached cautiously. "Excuse me, human Jack, but our instruments indicate you are consuming a liquid with high mineral content and chemical additives that should be classified as mildly toxic." Jack looked at his water bottle and laughed. "Oh, this is just tap water from my hometown. It's got that nice chlorine taste that lets you know it's been properly treated." He offered the bottle to Rix. "Want to try some?" Rix backed away so quickly he bumped into another student. "That could dissolve my exoskeleton." During orientation in the Grand Amphitheater, Dean Morlack's tentacles writhed nervously as he addressed a mixed group of students. The dean was an impressive cephaloid whose species was known for their calm demeanor, but today he seemed unusually agitated. Remember, species-appropriate safety protocols are mandatory. The human will need constant monitoring, and I cannot stress enough the importance of maintaining safe distances during any potentially hazardous activities. Jack raised his hand from his seat in the middle of the alien students, who had unconsciously formed a protective circle around him. "Actually, I'm pretty low maintenance. Back home, I got stung by a whole wasp nest as a kid and just took some antihistamines." The entire amphitheater fell silent. Dean Morlack's tentacles stopped moving entirely. The gaseous Nalori student sitting nearby, Pip, pulsed an alarmed orange color that spread through her translucent form like wildfire. Wasp venom should cause immediate neural shutdown. "Nah, just made me a bit itchy," Jack shrugged, completely oblivious to the growing horror around him. "Swelled up like a balloon for a few days, but I was back to playing baseball by the weekend." A Vithrak student in the front row began resonating at a frequency that indicated extreme distress. Multiple venomous stings should result in systemic collapse and death within minutes. Jack scratched his head thoughtfully. "Yeah, my mom was pretty worried. She made me carry one of those EpiPen things for a while, but I never needed it again. Built up immunity, I guess." Dean Morlack was frantically consulting his datapad, cross-referencing human biology texts with growing disbelief. "According to our records, your species should be incapable of surviving concentrated neurotoxin exposure without immediate medical intervention." "Well, kids are pretty resilient," Jack said cheerfully. "My little sister once ate a whole handful of holly berries from our backyard. Made her sick for a day, but she was fine. Mom just gave her some activated charcoal and plenty of fluids." The murmur that went through the assembled students sounded like a mix of amazement and terror. Holly berries were used in some sectors of the galaxy as a biological weapon. Pip had turned completely transparent with shock. "Your family unit allows juveniles to consume known toxins?" "Kids will eat anything," Jack explained with a grin. "You can't watch them every second. Part of growing up, really, builds character." A Keth professor in the faculty section stood up abruptly. "This is impossible. No known species can survive the toxicity levels you describe without genetic modification or cybernetic enhancement. Jack looked down at himself, then back at the professor. Nope, just regular human. Though I did get all my vaccinations before coming here. Had to get like 15 shots in one day. The doctor said I might feel a little under the weather, but I felt fine. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Vex's crystalline form resonating at frequencies that indicated he was having difficulty processing this information. Dean Morlack cleared his throat, or what passed for throat clearing among his species. Perhaps we should proceed with the dormitory assignments and allow our new student to settle in. I believe we all have much to learn from this exchange program. As the orientation ended and students began to disperse, Jack found himself surrounded by curious aliens who maintained what they considered a safe distance. He was completely unaware that he'd already become the most fascinating and potentially dangerous student in the university's long history. Professor Quantum Flux, a gaseous Nalori contained within a sophisticated environmental suit, was conducting the morning chemistry lab when disaster struck. Kate Williams, the second human exchange student who'd arrived the previous week, accidentally knocked over a beaker of concentrated acid while reaching for her notes. The liquid splashed across her hand and forearm. Every alien student in the lab immediately activated their emergency protocols. The insectoid students' carapaces sealed shut with loud clicking sounds. The Vithrak began emitting protective frequencies that made the air shimmer, and the Nalori professor's containment suit went into full hazmat mode with blaring alarms. Kate simply walked to the safety shower, rinsed off her arm, and examined the small red mark left behind. "Bit of a sting," she commented, then returned to her workstation like nothing happened. The lab fell silent, except for the sound of Professor Quantum Flux's suit recalibrating. That should have dissolved your calcium matrix instantly," the professor whispered through the translator. "Yeah, we had worse stuff in our school chemistry sets back home," Kate replied, continuing her experiment. She picked up another beaker and started mixing compounds while her lab partner, a tall Keth named Zrick, stared at her with all six of his compound eyes. Zrick's mandibles clicked nervously. "You mean your younglings handle corrosive materials regularly?" "Oh, sure," Kate said, adding drops of solution to her mixture. "My little brother once drank toilet bowl cleaner when he was 3. Mom just made him drink milk and called poison control. He was fine by dinner. The entire class stopped what they were doing. Even the normally stoic Vithrak students began pulsing with alarmed frequencies. Professor Quantum Flux's suit speakers crackled. "Poison control? You have dedicated systems for toxin exposure?" "Well, yeah. Kids eat weird stuff all the time," Kate shrugged. "Paint chips, cleaning supplies, random berries from the yard. It's like a rite of passage." A Nalori student named Wisp, whose gaseous form was turning an anxious purple, drifted closer. "How do any of you survive to reproductive age?" Kate thought about it while swirling her test tube. "Honestly, good question. My cousin Tommy once stuck a fork in an electrical outlet when he was 5. Just got thrown across the room and had funny hair for a week. Oh, and there was that time my friend Jake fell through ice on a frozen pond. We pulled him out, gave him hot chocolate, and he was back to normal in an hour." The room was getting more and more quiet. Students were looking at Kate like she was some kind of walking miracle or maybe a very convincing hologram. During the break, Kate pulled out her water bottle and took a long drink. Immediately, every scan in the room started beeping. The liquid inside was registering as a mild toxin with high mineral content. "What are you consuming?" Zrick asked, his voice shaking. Kate looked at the label. "Tap water from my hometown. Nothing fancy." She offered the bottle to him. "Want some?" Zrick backed away so fast he knocked over his stool. "That contains industrial chemicals and bacterial organisms." "Yeah, gives it that nice metallic taste," Kate said, taking another gulp. "The chlorine's a bit strong, but you get used to it." Professor Quantum Flux's suit was now running a full biological scan on Kate. "According to my readings, you've consumed 17 different chemical compounds today that should cause immediate organ failure in most known species." Kate counted on her fingers. "Let's see. Coffee, orange juice, that energy drink from the vending machine, some antacid tablets. And now this water. What else? Oh, right, I had some leftover pizza for breakfast. Pretty sure that cheese was past its expiration date. The silence was deafening. You willingly consumed spoiled food? Wisp had turned completely white with shock. 5-second rule doesn't apply to pizza, Kate explained matter-of-factly. Besides, my stomach can handle pretty much anything. One time I ate gas station sushi on a road trip. Felt a little queasy for an hour. Then I was fine. A small Vithrak student began making high-pitched crystalline sounds. Professor Quantum Flux quickly translated. Young Hexus wants to know if humans are actually an advanced form of biological weapon. Kate laughed, which somehow made the situation even more terrifying for her classmates. Nah, we're just regular people. Though I guess when you grow up drinking from garden hoses, eating food that's been sitting out, and swimming in lakes that probably have brain-eating bacteria, you build up a tolerance. By now, word was spreading to the lab about the human who'd survived acid contact. Students from other sections were peeking through the windows. Kate continued her experiment, completely oblivious to the fact that she'd become the most fascinating and terrifying student in the university's history. When class ended, she packed up her supplies and headed for the door. See you tomorrow, everyone. We're doing explosive compounds next, right? Should be fun. The room remained silent long after she left, with every alien student wondering how humanity had managed to conquer space when they should have all died from their own planet years ago. The field trip to Gamma Station required full radiation suits for most species. Jack wore standard gear, while his classmates waddled around in meter-thick protective suits that made them look like walking tanks. The Vithrak students had to be completely encased in lead-line crystal containers, while Nalori needed triple-filtered atmospheric processors just to maintain their gaseous form safely. The radiation here measures 800 units, announced Dr. Quilex, their six-armed instructor, his voice muffled to the massive helmet he wore. Each of his arms was operating different monitoring devices that beeped constantly. Fatal exposure occurs at 100 units for most species. Tom, another human who joined the program that semester, walked up next to Jack, wearing nothing more than a basic jumpsuit and helmet. He looked around at the harsh landscape of twisted metal and glowing rocks. Reminds me of that beach vacation in Australia. Remember Bondi Beach after that solar storm? Oh, yeah. Jack nodded, kicking at some radioactive debris. My sunburn lasted for weeks after that trip. The alien students clustered together, their various protective suits making communication difficult. Through their thick barriers, they watched the two humans stroll around like they were taking a casual walk in the park. Dr. Quilex checked his readings again, convinced his equipment was malfunctioning. The human readings showed direct exposure to levels that should cause immediate cellular breakdown. Maybe their equipment is broken, suggested one of the Kess students, whose voice was barely audible through layers of shielding. Jack overheard and tapped his radiation badge. Nope, working fine. Says we're getting about the same dose as a cross-country flight back home. Maybe a bit less than a medical X-ray. The group continued their geological survey, with the alien students moving slowly and carefully while constantly checking their protection levels. Meanwhile, Jack and Tom chatted casually about rock formations and collected samples with their bare hands. Careful with that sample, Dr. Quilex warned as Tom picked up a glowing chunk of mineral that's emitting gamma radiation at lethal levels. Tom held it up to the light, examining the crystal structure. Pretty. Looks kind of like uranium glass. My grandmother had a whole set of dishes made from that stuff. Used to eat off them every Sunday. The entire class stopped moving. Even through their protective suits, the horror was visible. You ate from radioactive dishware? Vex's voice was barely a whisper through the comm system. Sure, common in the 1940s. Jack added helpfully. People thought it was fancy because it glowed under blacklight. Made great party decorations. When the solar flare hit without warning, emergency sirens wailed across the station. The automated safety system kicked in immediately, sealing blast doors and activating emergency protocols. Every alien student dove into the nearest shielded bunker as radiation levels spiked to numbers that made their instruments scream warnings. Jack stood outside in the open, squinting up at the sky as waves of charged particles lit up the atmosphere in brilliant colors. "Bit bright today." Vex's voice crackled through the comm system from deep inside the emergency bunker. "Get to safety. That radiation should melt your DNA. I'm wearing SPF 30. Jack called back, pulling out a small bottle of sunscreen and applying more to his nose. "Should be fine. This is actually really beautiful. Tom, you getting pictures?" Tom had his camera out, snapping photos of the light show while standing directly in what should have been a lethal radiation field. "Yeah, this will make great backgrounds on my desktop. Way better than that time we watched the Northern Lights in Alaska." The flare lasted for 20 minutes. The alien students remained huddled in protective bunkers while their equipment registered radiation levels that should have sterilized the entire surface of the station. When it finally ended and the all-clear sounded, they emerged cautiously to find the two humans sitting on a bench, sharing a sandwich and discussing weekend plans. That evening, back at the station's common area, Tom opened a bottle of ethanol-based liquor he brought from Earth. The label read Kentucky Bourbon 95 proof. The other students backed away as if he'd pulled out a weapon. The bottle's contents registered as a Class B industrial solvent on their scanners. "This is how you celebrate surviving radiation exposure?" Dr. Quilex asked, keeping his distance. "Well, it's Friday," Tom said, pouring 2 glasses. He offered one to Jack. "Want some?" "Don't mind if I do," Jack replied, taking a sip and sighing contentedly. "Good stuff. Burns just right." A Nalori student named Flux had turned completely transparent with fear. "That should dissolve your internal organs." "Nah, just gives you a nice warm feeling," Tom explained, taking another drink. "Back in college, we used to drink something called Everclear. This is much smoother." Jack nodded in agreement. "One time my buddy Mike accidentally drank with alcohol at a party. Made him go blind for a few hours, but he was fine by morning." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of alien students backing further away and Dr. Quilex frantically updating his notes about human biology. "How?" Vex finally asked, "How did your species survive long enough to develop space travel?" Tom and Jack looked at each other and shrugged. "Honestly," Jack said, raising his glass, "we're still not really sure ourselves." Medical simulation class with Dr. Zalera required volunteer test subjects. Jack stepped forward while Kate, another human student, operated the scanning equipment. The advanced medical scanner was the pride of the university, capable of detecting cellular damage, pathogen loads, and biological stress down to the molecular level. The readings made no sense. Dr. Zalera's feathers ruffled in distress as numbers flashed across multiple screens, each one more alarming than the last. "Your immune system is fighting 17 different pathogens simultaneously," she whispered, her voice barely audible through the translator. The display showed active battles happening throughout Jack's bloodstream. Any one of these should cause organ failure. Jack looked at the screen with mild interest. "Oh, yeah, I've had a cold this week. Plus, I think I picked up something from the cafeteria food yesterday. That fish tasted a bit off." The alien students gathered around the monitors in horrified fascination. A Keth student named Rix clicked his mandibles nervously. "You knowingly consumed spoiled protein and continued normal activities? Well, you can't let a little food poisoning slow you down." Jack shrugged. "I had exams to study for." Dr. Zalera moved to the next set of readings. The bone density scanner triggered multiple alarms that filled the room with urgent beeping sounds. "Your skeletal structure should collapse under gravitational stress. These readings show bone density that would crush your internal organs." Kate looked up from the control panel. "Earth's gravity is pretty heavy. We're used to it. Jack here probably does weightlifting too, right?" "Yeah, I hit the gym most mornings," Jack confirmed. "Nothing too crazy, just about 200 pounds on the bench press." The room fell silent except for the sound of Vithrak students resonating at frequencies that indicated extreme distress. 200 pounds was roughly equivalent to the weight of a small spacecraft. "You voluntarily place crushing weight on your body for recreation?" Dr. Zalera's feathers were now standing completely on end. "Builds character," Jack said cheerfully. "My dad always said pain is just weakness leaving the body." The blood pressure readings caused the AI to repeatedly announce in its calm, mechanical voice, "Fatal levels detected. Seek immediate medical attention." Fatal levels detected. Dr. Zalera checked the readings 3 times. "Your circulatory pressure should cause immediate vessel rupture. This is beyond hypertensive crisis levels." Jack scratched his head. That's weird. I've been trying to cut back on salt lately. Maybe it's all the coffee I've been drinking to stay awake for finals." "How much coffee?" asked a concerned Lori student whose gaseous form had turned a worried shade of brown. "Oh, maybe 8 or 9 cups today. I'm pulling an all-nighter for my xenobiology report." Kate nodded sympathetically. "I'm up to about 12 cups myself. There's this great coffee shop near campus that makes triple shots." The medical AI continued its announcements while running deeper scans. Toxicity levels exceeding safe parameters. Multiple organ stress indicators. Cellular damage consistent with radiation exposure. "That's probably from yesterday's field trip," Jack said helpfully. "We spent a lot of time in that radiation zone. Great learning experience, though." Dr. Zalera was frantically taking notes, her 6 hands moving across multiple data pads simultaneously. The scanner is also detecting traces of ethanol, caffeine, nicotine, and something called capsaicin. "Oh, I had hot wings for lunch," Jack explained. "Ghost pepper level. There's this challenge at the campus bar, where if you can eat 12 of them without drinking milk, you get your picture on the wall." "And you succeeded?" Rix's compound eyes were bulging with disbelief. "Took me 3 tries, but yeah, though I did sweat a lot, and my tongue went numb for about an hour." The scanner beeped again, displaying new information. Dr. Zalera read the results with growing amazement. "Your liver appears to be processing 17 different toxins simultaneously while maintaining normal function." Jack stretched and yawned, seemingly bored by the medical discussion. "Anyone else hungry? I could go for a burger. All this talk about food is making me crave something greasy. After consuming spoiled fish and ghost peppers?" The question came from Beth, a Keth student whose mandibles were trembling with shock. "Sure, variety is the spice of life," Jack grinned. "Plus, I heard the campus burger joint uses some kind of mystery meat. Could be fun to try." Kate was reviewing the scan results on her screen. "Hey, Jack, according to this, your white blood cell count is off the charts. Like, massively elevated. Yeah, I've been fighting off this cold for a week. My immune system's working overtime." Dr. Zalera's voice was barely a whisper. "These levels indicate your body is simultaneously fighting multiple infections that should each be individually fatal." "Bodies are pretty tough," Jack said matter-of-factly. "One time I got pneumonia, strep throat, and food poisoning all in the same week during college finals. Still managed to pass all my exams." Beth's mandibles trembled as she asked a question that was on everyone's mind. "How? How are you alive?" Jack considered this seriously for a moment. "Good genes, I guess. My grandmother lived in 98, and she smoked a pack a day, drank whiskey every night, and worked in an asbestos factory for 30 years. The room erupted in various alien expressions of horror and disbelief, while Jack remained completely oblivious to the fact that he'd just become the most medically fascinating creature in the known galaxy. The alien students gathered in the common room, whispering among themselves as Jack and the other humans played cards nearby. The atmosphere was different now, filled with a mixture of fascination and genuine fear that hadn't been there at the beginning of the semester. "I've been researching their homeworld," Vex announced, projecting a detailed hologram of Earth that slowly rotated in the center of the room. The blue and green planet looked deceptively peaceful. Constant pathogenic exposure, solar radiation, atmospheric toxins, crushing gravity, and they voluntarily consumed cellular poisons for recreation. The hologram zoomed in to show various regions of Earth. Volcanic eruptions, massive storms, radiation-soaked deserts, and toxic industrial areas appeared in succession. Each image made the alien students recoil further. Pip pulsed a respectful blue, her gaseous form shifting to show deep emotion. "They're not just resilient. They're living in conditions that would exterminate most galactic species before they could even evolve basic consciousness. Look at this, Vex continued, pulling up atmospheric data. Their air contains industrial pollutants, volcanic ash, and biological contaminants that our people would classify as chemical weapons. They breathe this every day and call it fresh air. A young Keth student named Zrick clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. And their water sources, I ran analysis on what they call tap water. It contains chlorine compounds, metallic particles, and trace amounts of pharmaceutical drugs. Don't forget the microplastics, added Beth, who had become something of an expert on human biology since her lab partnership with Kate. Their food chain is contaminated with synthetic polymers that should cause immediate system failure. The hologram shifted to show Earth's weather patterns. Massive hurricanes, tornadoes that could level entire cities, and temperature extremes that range from desert heat to Arctic cold. They live through this, Pip whispered in amazement. And they call it Tuesday, Beth added with something approaching awe. Across the room, the humans were engaged in their usual evening card game. Tom was dealing while Kate sorted her hand, and Jack was telling some story about his weekend plans. So I'm thinking of going skydiving this weekend, Jack was saying casually. There's this place about an hour from campus that does tandem jumps from 12,000 feet. Tom nodded enthusiastically. Sounds fun. I did bungee jumping last month. Nothing like falling toward the ground at terminal velocity to clear your head. Kate laughed. Remember that time in college when we went whitewater rafting in Class V Rapids? I think I swallowed half the river, but it was amazing. The alien students listened to this conversation with growing horror. They were discussing recreational activities that involved deliberately placing themselves in mortal danger, and they seemed excited about it. Vex pulled up more data. I found records of human recreational activities. Extreme sports, they call them. Mountain climbing in sub-zero temperatures, diving to crushing ocean depths, racing vehicles at lethal speeds, and something called base jumping, where they leap from cliffs with only fabric to slow their descent. They do this for fun, Rix observed, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic data. Not for survival, not for necessity, for entertainment. The research continued throughout the evening. Every piece of information about human civilization revealed new impossibilities. They built cities in earthquake zones, lived next to active volcanoes, and established permanent settlements in areas with regular natural disasters. Here's something interesting, Vex announced, pulling up historical data. They have survived multiple extinction-level events. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and massive climate changes. Other species went extinct, but humans adapted and thrived. Jack looked up from his card game, apparently having overheard part of the conversation. Hey, anyone want to try some hot sauce? Fair warning, though, it's Carolina Reaper level. He pulled out a small bottle with warning labels in multiple languages. The liquid inside was an ominous red color that seemed to glow slightly. The entire room of alien students simultaneously backed away, some of them activating personal protective shields. That should have killed you, Vex whispered, but now the tone was different. It wasn't an accusation anymore. It was wonder, pure and simple. Jack grinned and casually added a few drops to his sandwich. It's got a nice kick to it. Kate brought it back from her trip home last weekend. Kate nodded proudly. My brother grows them in his garden. He's working on developing an even hotter variety. Wants to break some kind of record. The alien students exchanged glances filled with a mixture of terror and deep respect. These weren't just hardy survivors. They were beings who had turned survival itself into an art form. Word of the humans' impossible resilience had spread throughout the university. Students from other departments began making excuses to visit the common room, hoping to witness firsthand the legendary creatures who treated deadly radiation like sunshine and consumed industrial solvents for pleasure. Jack became particularly famous after someone spread the story about him asking the chemistry professor if battery acid counted as a sports drink. It became a running joke throughout the campus, though the aliens weren't entirely sure it was actually a joke. From that day forward, the human exchange students weren't just classmates. They were legends, walking, talking proof that sometimes the most impossible things in the universe were also the most wonderful. The respect was mutual, though the humans had gained something just as valuable. Friends who saw them not as fragile creatures needing protection, but as the incredibly tough survivors they'd always been.